whatever. The party's trying to move ahead of that December 12th election to try to get this wrapped up. Will that work? The former CBO Director, Doug Holtz-Eakin. Very good to see you, my friend. What do you think that, you know, outside events are outside events, but this is the one that seems to be providing the latest catalyst to get hopping?
I think that's right. I mean, there's an enormous amount of pressure on the Republicans to deliver legislatively for the president. There's an enormous amount of pressure to deliver in the economy. I mean, they were sent to Washington to make the economy perform better. Yeah. And now
you think
they got a clock on it. This
package, the way you crunched it, will do that?
I think the common elements in the House and the Senate, the corporate reforms, the pass-through business the efforts will improve the climate to invest, innovate, hire people in the U.S., pay them better. The key to this is getting better wage growth. It's not jobs. It's the fact that we've got people who are working full-time, full year, and not getting a real increase in their income.
What would compel these guys to pay their workers more? What suddenly changes?
No one wants to, but you got a tight labor market, and it drives wages up. So if you get a big investment boom...
We've had a tight labor market for a while. It's not been driving.
Not really. In 2016, we saw median family income rise 3.2%. Everyone was like, this is great.
Okay.
Inside that, full-time, full-year workers got zero. All of it was people moving out of part-time into full-time or starting to work a little bit. So the labor market has finally tightened. That stuff's gone away, and it's time to get productivity and real wage growth up.
Do you think right now, if they get it under this, before this December 12th election in Alabama, that they have enough support to get it approved, particularly in the Senate? The House, I don't think will be an issue. You might know this better than I. The Senate could be dicey. I'm just wondering how you see it all factoring in.
It's always dicey in the Senate. I mean, the margin's tight. There are lots of things that could derail it.
It's a lot tighter.
Always.
It's 51-49 versus 52-40.
Yes, and they're keenly aware of that. I think you're right about that arithmetic. So we'll see what the amendments look like in the Senate Finance Committee, get a flavor for what's important to people. But I think Republicans, if they can look at the bill and say, this is going to deliver growth, it's going to deliver for the middle class in pre-tax wages, not just in tax cuts, then that's the sell.
That's what I've been saying, Doug, to a lot of people, that people of all stripes, from, you know, the very rich to the not so rich, have to see it in their net paychecks, right?
Yes.
And if they don't, or it's not considerable, could it boomerang on Republicans? Could they say, we waited for this?
Yeah, I think it's very simple. I think the Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the White House for one and only one reason: better economic performance. And if it doesn't happen,
but no,
if
you get your net paycheck and you see, well, I'm saying a little bit, but it was nearly what I thought. Now, I know the constraints of the system and reconciliation, all that. A lot of people do as well. Maybe they sort out these brackets in the Senate versus the 4 in the House. But in the end, if it turns out that the savings that a lot of folks thought they'd get, they don't get, or in some of these high-tax states like the one we're in, even middle-class folks pay more, then what?
Well, I think it'll come down to really, do we see the economy that it's grinding along at 2.1% genuinely jump up and grow faster? If people see that, they'll...
You think we will?
I think there's a really good chance that if they're disciplined in the growth aspects of this bill, don't get caught up in the class warfare, stop worrying about all these little niceties, focus on better incentives, make them permanent, which is hard in reconciliation, but, you know, really focus on that. That could be a big sell.
All right. A lot of people talk about how this won't be revenue neutral in the end, that the budget deficit could get worse, debt will be worse in 10 years than it is now. That's happened under both parties, as you've reminded me. But the Republicans are going to be in a conundrum about that a year from now. Do you think they will? Because the immediate effect of these tax cuts won't be realized, assuming they're passed, but the higher deficit will.
So I think there are two litmus tests for this reform. Number one, on the budget front, no one should want to have another $1.5 trillion in debt. The question is, will there be enough growth to make it worthwhile? And senators and House Republicans have to decide that. Got to look at the plan as it emerges from committee and into conference. The second litmus test is the overseas earnings. The way this works is there's a date on which they're deemed to have come back, whether they do or not. They only really come back if the economy's performing better, if the tax reform is worth it. So there's a built-in test as to whether we've got a good tax reform.
That's a very good point. The lowest rate in the world doesn't necessarily mean you just automatically bring it home.
Right.
All right. Thank you very, very much. Doug Holtz-Eakin, the former CBO Director.